Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome back. This is Jay, and today we're delving into a topic that's incredibly important yet often overlooked: the psychospiritual impacts of fibroids. You see, beyond the physical challenges, fibroids can cast a profound shadow on our emotional, mental well being. In this heart-to-heart discussion, we're going to explore how these little troublemakers can affect our self-esteem, relationships, and overall quality of life. But don't worry, we're not just going to focus on the challenges and leave you hanging. We're also going to explore practical tips and gentle strategies to help you navigate this journey with grace and compassion. Join me and my guest, Rohana McPherson, who is a first-generation child of Caribbean immigrants whose life work centers around supporting community organizations and organizers in various aspects, and Kenya Jackson Salters, who is a thought leader, master facilitator, and author. So if you or a loved one are dealing with fibroids, or you're simply curious about the human experience, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our warm and supportive community. Let's uncover the layers of our well-being together. You ready? All right, let's dive in. Well, thank you all for being here with me for the first iteration of the Cottage Conversations.
Yes.
So as you know, tonight we are focusing on fibroids, the psychospiritual impacts of the symptoms and treatment options related to uterine fibroids. And I selected you to have this conversation with because of your personal journeys, but also your professional presence in the community. And so to have this conversation with that dual lens as people who hold space for others, who help connect others with resources, as well as your own personal experience with fibroids, uterine fibroids.
I'm Kenya, and I am I'm a certified spiritual coach, and I'm connected to the conversation because we've done business together in the past, and we also have my wife is your best friend, but also because I had fibroids and I had them removed it'll be a year ago in June. Yeah.
And my name is Rohana, and I'm connected with you beautiful people through community and friendship. And for my personal work and professional work, I work in movement. So we do a lot of community building, political organizing, and, you know, a lot of interaction with the community around our needs collectively. So I'm excited to be here because I did have fibroids and I had them removed last September.
Oh, wow. So we're all about the same.
Yeah, it was August. So, I had my surgery in August, and you were a little bit before that.
June 23rd.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, freshly fibroid free, that is what we are claiming. This is a fibroid freedom conversation as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, let's backtrack a little bit though, and I want to know what some of your symptoms were, and how long were you experiencing them before you sought treatment? I feel like that's really important because I hear about so many people suffering in silence or normalizing some of the symptoms, and we just get used to it. So what were some of the things you experienced, and how long were they going on before you got treatment?
I think what's kind of wild to think about is that I started noticing symptoms around 2012.
Wow.
And for me, one of the first things I noticed is that I could feel kind of like a lump inside my uterine cavity. And I was like, this wasn't here before, and it made me really anxious and scared. So during my next gyno appointment, I brought it up and I was like, I don't know what's going on here. But because I had a normal pap smear, my gynecologist was like, you don't have anything to worry about. And in fact, you really don't need to come to a gynecologist for your woman's exams. You can just go to a PA for that. So you don't even really need to come in here for regular wellness exams. So I did not go to a gynecologist again for 10 years until I needed to get checked out for fibroids and my potential surgery. So it was an interesting journey for me because like hearing from my providers over and over again that there wasn't a problem because, you know, their scans didn't show anything, kind of made me trust, you know, the medical system less and less. So my next doctor I asked, they said the same thing. They never brought up fibroids. They never brought up the idea of doing an ultrasound. So it wasn't until 2021 when by then I just had like a regular PA as doing my wellness exams. And she was like, oh, I feel like something here, and you should probably go and get it checked out. And once I finally went to another gynecologist, they said, oh, your uterus is enlarged like you're 17 weeks pregnant. So there's definitely something in there.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that began the journey towards getting them removed.
Oh, thank you for sharing that, Ro. Yeah, it's a lot of similarities, you know, hearing that thread and even just the minimization of your symptoms, and you don't need to even really worry about that. And I know that comes up a lot for women, particularly Black women, who are experiencing the symptoms, and people who have uteruses that are seeking out care get so many mixed feedbacks, a lot of mixed information from different professionals.
Yeah.
What about you, Kenya?
So it's interesting you say that, right? Because I was like, wow, that sounds like it was so long ago. I actually realized I had fibroids in 2018. And no one told me. I was never directly told I had fibroids. I was in a car accident and I went to get an MRI, and an MRI was of my back. And when I got the report from the MRI, it said, like as a note at the bottom, there's a 2-centimeter fibroid. And I thought, you know, and so the next time I went back to the doctor, I said, this 2-centimeter fibroid. And she's like, oh, it's like the size of a grape. Like, just don't even worry about it. And I was like, okay. And I didn't start experiencing real symptoms until probably about 2020.
Okay.
And my cycle was dramatically worse. And I work out a lot. So I never had long cycles. I never had cramps. My cycle would go for maybe 4 or 5 days. And the first 2 or 3 days, I would joke. I was like, oh, it's a crime scene. That's what it would be like. And it got to the point where I could not sleep in my bed anymore because we had carpet. And women who are watching this know that, you know, that first moment when you're sleeping and you stand up, that like rush, I would soil everything, myself, the carpet, the floor. So I was sleeping on the couch. And I did that for like 2 years of sleeping on the couch. And then I started having excruciating pain to the point where like it was like in my back, my fibroids were sitting on my, rectal like nerve. So it would feel like this pressure in my back, and I would be like, couldn't move. And I kind of attributed them to weight gain. I was like, oh, you're overweight. And I gained like 40 pounds over the pandemic. So I'm like, you're overweight, you know, you're out of shape, you're getting older, like all of these things. And I never thought that it was the fibroids until one day I was at workout and I fainted. And my doctor said I was so anemic. He said, you're so anemic that you can't exercise.
Yeah.
And that is what did it for me, because I was big into the gym, and I was like, he was like, you're so anemic, you literally cannot. Like, you don't have enough blood in your body, and the quality of blood that you have in your body is not enough. And I'm thinking, okay, it's a grape. Yeah. That's what I thought.
Yeah. Right.
And then when we started to investigate, we realized that it was much larger and there were way more than one.
Yeah. So, I mean, just going back to that psychospiritual impact, right? Your day-to-day, the working out, sleep, not being able to sleep in your own bed. I mean, these symptoms are significantly disrupting our lives, and we just learn how to work around
push it through it. Like, it's normal to sleep
like,
on the couch with a towel.
Truly.
I mean, I can't tell you how many period panties I've invested in, right? To try to find that sense of security.
Oh my gosh.
Layering up tampon pad and period panties. And again, the amount of people that I know that this is common for, or it's this sense of normalcy that we just adjust to. I mean, I know people who have told me, we don't leave our homes the first 2 or 3 days of our cycles.
Yeah, the first 2 days.
It's canceled. Like life is canceled.
Yep.
And I know for me, it's actually most recently was my second diagnosis. So I had initial diagnosis pretty early on, around 2010, somewhere around there. Multiple fibroids, large fibroids, had a myomectomy around that time. And my symptoms then were pretty much just the bloating and the enlarged abdomen. I also went to a PCP, routine check-in. Oh, I think you're pregnant. Oh, no, that's not. Not possible. What? Not happening. It's not possible. And so he was the one who said, oh, well, we need to get this looked at because something's happening. Fast forward 10 plus years later, second diagnosis, and I started noticing that one because of the pulsation, right? Waking up in the morning and feeling something pulsing in my stomach. The pressure, the bloating. But this one also came along with the heavier bleeding. And that wasn't necessarily happening the first time. So I finally got tired of it. I got tired of it. I'm like, this is not normal. This is not okay. The anemia, that impact, that common, just even taking iron.
Yep, I was taking iron too.
Yeah.
Same.
Yep. Yep.
So with that, I am also curious, how common is this in y'all's circles with other friends? How many people do you know who have had similar experiences?
When I started talking about it, it's probably easier to name people who don't than it is the people who do. So a lot of people I spoke to had either had it or had already had myomectomies, or have fibroids currently or had them. So I could probably count on my hand the people who don't have it more so than do.
That's real.
Yep. Or who don't know too. Some people don't know.
Absolutely.
Yep. Some people don't know. Yep.
I think it's been interesting, like, finding out how many people have struggled with, fibroids after kind of like having to go on like the personal journey alone, kind of in some way. So since finding out that I had fibroids, I feel like anytime, it was a conversation I was trying to have with everybody because it's like, oh my God, do you want to know what I'm going through right now? And then it's just like, oh, so this is something that you've dealt with. Oh, this is something that you've dealt with. So it feels like within the last year, I have, kind of found like a community around, how many, particularly Black women have, either had a hysterectomy because of fibroids, a myomectomy, or have decided that they are just trying to shrink their fibroids. A lot of women deal with it, and and then a lot of people don't know. Because I didn't have any clue until I was anemic, and then they found like a little lump.
And who is anemic because of a cycle that happens once a month? Like, that was the thing that I could not wrap my mind around. Like, there's no way that the anemia is being caused by the fibroids. Like, there's no way that that could be what it was. And it absolutely was that.
Shows you 100%. How severe it is. Shows you how severe it is. I'm curious for you all, with your exploration of the symptoms, and we'll get to treatment a little later. Did you experience any shame or guilt? I know you talked to Kenya about the weight, and is this because of the weight? I know for me, some stuff came up around early lifestyle, like when I was younger. Like, are there things that I did to cause this, especially with the first diagnosis, because I was still in my 20s. And I had a lot of shame and guilt about, what did I do to cause this? What did I do wrong? And Ro, you mentioned kind of the lack of conversation that has been happening. It wasn't until years after that diagnosis that I found out my mom's hysterectomy was because of fibroids. Wow. And I knew that she had had a hysterectomy, but I never put it together until all of that came out. And so you know, we have the genetic component, various factors that go into it. So I know for me, feeling like I was trying to live a healthy lifestyle, and, you know, I'm doing the spiritual work. And then when you go down the rabbit hole of treatments and stuff, that shame and guilt was really present at one point. And I really had to find ways to work through that on my healing journey.
Yeah, for sure. Like, that was big for me. I had judged fibroids as something for women who were unhealthy. And there was some early conversations around with some people who were around me in the in my fitness space that kind of characterized them as that way. And because, you know, in 2019, I was the fittest I've ever been. You know, I was 160. She was just, whoa, she was giving. I was like, I look great, you know? So to find out that that's when they actually surfaced was then. I didn't get the symptoms until later. I had a lot of shame. And I was like, you did this to yourself. You ate too much carbs. You had too much bread. You had too much yeast. You had too much, estrogen. Like, it's your fault. Like, you did this to yourself. And I was embarrassed. I felt like I hadn't taken good care of myself. And I think you can't ignore the fact that as a spiritual teacher and a wellness worker, like, it's a disease of the womb. And that was something that felt really personal. And I was like, what could I have done energetically to attack my womb? You know, and that's what it felt like. And so, you know, for that reason, I didn't talk a lot about it, because I just felt like, I don't know what I did. And because I can't put my finger on it, I just don't want to really talk about it.
And thanks for naming the karmic piece of it too, because I've also heard that lens, you know, that we just need to heal something inside of us, or we know the mind-body connection. And I think that's true. Like, epigenetics are real, but also I refuse to believe that droves and droves of Black people with uteruses are out here serving some sort of
manifesting,
right? Like, we all
fibroids,
just,
right? Yeah.
You know, like, I believe in the collective conscious, but I also believe in the collective power of healing. And I think that's a lot of blame and a lot of shame to put on a whole group of folks who are experiencing this together. I have a little theory, don't quote me on this, but I also feel like some of this might be related to when we speak of healing intergenerational trauma.
Yes.
That's interesting.
How magical would we have been to create a condition to spare our wombs from creating more enslaved people?
So stop. So wait, no,
Say
literally, mentally, that's exactly what I was thinking. And I was like, I was thinking that. Like, did we as a collective conscious say, we'll shut this down?
Shut it down.
We'll shut this
You're not
down.
taking no more of our babies.
We'll shut this down.
We're not
just
contributing
thinking
to
that.
this anymore.
Yeah. I was
Maybe
just thinking
that's
that.
what it is.
Right.
And maybe that's what we're healing, not that.
The grief, too, that we would hold in our womb. The grief that we would hold from giving our children away.
Not giving.
Well, to have them be told, have them be
Ripped
taken.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My bad with the giving. Edit that out. We didn't give them. I say giving. It's late.
I think about that so much.
We talk about Black
that all
girl
the
magic.
time.
Yeah. I mean, and it's just like, you know, so many, you know, Black and brown uteruses went through so much.
Yes.
Especially in this country that is America.
Yeah, I think
And it's
about
like,
that too.
you know, it does feel like, you know, a manifestation of, you know, previous generations of trauma.
Like, I got you.
Because it's a way that we protect
Because you're born, your female children are born with all the eggs they're ever going to get.
Yep.
So that's it.
Yeah.
Listen, I would not doubt it.
So maybe you can quote me on that then.
Yeah. I'm down to quote you.
Quote me on that.
Back at I just came from the Legacy Museum in Montgomery, and when you see the mothers of gynecology are there, and Arca, Lucy, and Bessie, when you go and see what was done to those women who were enslaved and how they were experimented on, I can feel them Still. Every time I walk into that hospital, I feel nauseous still.
Yeah.
And it's been hundreds of years,
Yeah.
you know? And so I don't doubt it that they might have been like, you know what? Don't worry about it.
F that.
Don't even worry about it.
Down.
Yeah, the energy is still with us.
The energy, yeah. So as we are cycle breaking and disrupting that and clearing our lineages and clearing the energy as the healers that we are, not only do you not know what you did, again, if you go to 3 providers, they're gonna all give you different.
Yeah, they were like, oh, it's because you're black. I was like,
Absolutely.
okay.
Pretty much. I literally had a doctor explain that to me, that the way to stop the cycle of fibroids is to stop replicating the gene.
Yeah.
Hello?
And I was like, well, I don't know how to replicate genes.
How do you stop
Right.
stop passing on the gene? So pretty much telling black people to stop.
Well, he told me they were going to come back. He said they're going to come back in 3 to 6 months. And I was like, well, why? I was like, he's like, yeah, because you're black. I was like, oh, great.
Yeah.
Wow.
It can be really hard and harmful depending on who you're going to seek medical care from. And so I am curious too about what you all did once you got the diagnosis, any holistic treatments you tried, anything that you explored before moving forward with a procedure. Because we all ended up getting the procedure, but I know for me, especially the earlier diagnosis around 2010, I changed a lot. I cut out caffeine. That's when I went vegetarian, vegan, stopped smoking. I think I was still drinking around that time. But I eliminated a lot of stuff because I went to holistic providers. I was on the internet Googling. I was ordering manuals, these recipe books, fibroid freedom elimination. There's so much out there. The herbs are expensive. The tinctures are expensive. People are making money off of this. And there's a part of me that is appreciative that there's alternative methods to surgery, but also the messaging there, again, is kind of like, if you just eat healthy enough, this can go away. Right. I was eliminating so much from my diet. Like one of the books talked about eliminating, it's estrogen dominance. So that keeps coming up, right? Estrogen dominance. And something had like chickpeas and cucumber. Chickpeas and cucumbers?
Yeah. And I'm also a woman too, so like saying don't have estrogen is tough for me.
Right.
Just naturally.
You have too much estrogen.
Yeah. What am I really supposed to do about that?
Yeah. So the estrogen dominance is tricky. Figuring out, again, as you said, as a holistic practitioner, energetically, what does this mean? You know, the uterus, the womb as the seat of creation. What do I need to clear it all out? Ultimately, I feel like for me, the holistic methods help delay the return. It was about a 10-year span.
Yeah.
Right.
But they came back.
Yeah.
They came back.
Yeah.
Anything that y'all explored holistically or naturally?
I feel like I wish I'd gotten a chance to, because by the time I found out that it was fibroids, it was just taking over my life in a way that felt like it needed like immediate intervention in a way that didn't feel like I had time for even an exploration of, a holistic journey. And so it's also interesting that you talk about like the shame around it, because for me, there was so much shame because it felt like, even though I didn't know exactly what was going on, I could tell that in the event that I ever wanted to have kids, it wasn't possible. Right. And even though I didn't have any doctors confirming that for me, I was readily telling people, oh yeah, there's absolutely no way I could get pregnant. And I knew it. Yeah. So it was kind of wild to find out that I had a fibroid smack dab in the middle of my uterus that would have absolutely made it impossible for me to get pregnant. Wow. And because I didn't know it was a fibroid, I was like, well, what did I do in my life, you know, that was causing me, you know, to essentially not be able to carry a child, because I knew it energetically and spiritually, even though I didn't have the confirmation from any providers or anything like that. So I really do wish I had a chance to do like a holistic journey around it. But as soon as I found out I was anemic, and, you know, by that time, my symptoms had made it to a point where I was having like 10-day periods. Yeah. You know, I'm doing like 3 different layers. So it's like you've got, you know.
Had to buy the special thinks, and then the overnight, and then a towel.
Exactly. So and then you're still bleeding through things. You're still feeling like you can't go anywhere while you're on your period. It had just taken over my life. Oh, the draining, the energy drain.
Right, yeah.
You know, it's just like, I didn't feel like I had energy for anything. So I was like, I gotta get this out of me right now. Felt like I had to.
Immediate.
Yeah, it was the same. I didn't have time, and it's like same thing with the drain. Like literally day 2 of my cycle, I would be like, I'm not doing anything. I wouldn't even realize that, but I would literally sleep all day. And I went to get an ultrasound because we wanted to have kids, and I knew I had the fibroid. And the one that I thought I had, and when they did the ultrasound, they said that they couldn't even see my ovaries. The one ovary, they couldn't even see it because they were like, it's so big. And I didn't have any fibroids inside my uterus; they were all outside. But my uterus was completely like misshapen, and where mine was sitting on my nerve, they were like, literally every day you're aggravating this. Sitting, working out, squatting, anything, because it was sitting right on my anus, and it was insanity. I couldn't, and they were like, you know, there's nothing you can do. You gotta take it out.
Right.
Yeah.
You gotta take it out. And I didn't want to shrink it. I didn't want the tumor. Like knowing there was a tumor in my body made me feel sick. I was like, I don't want some foreign thing in me that doesn't belong there. Like I didn't want to shrink them. I was like, no, take it out. Take it out. Like I don't want to have that there.
Yeah, again, the mental, the psychospiritual effects, the mental, emotional impacts. Like, how are we navigating life like this?
Right.
The layers, the anemia, the fatigue. And we're like, hey, sign me up. I'm here, life, ready to go. And we're not. Yeah. We're not. There's so many people pushing through and suffering in silence. Not to mention the impacts on our relationships.
Oh my goodness!
Like if you're managing all this inside, how are we showing up in our relationships to love?
And you know, I don't know what your questions are. I don't want to say this, but it's interesting as women that identify as queer, right? And when you have a normal pap smear, because you're not engaged in any risky sexual behavior, what they would classify as risky, it's easy for them to say, well, you don't need this. Like you're like, I remember like people laughing at me like, oh my God, you don't do anything. It's fine. You know? And it's like, meanwhile, this whole thing is going on. And because I'm not engaged in risky sexual behavior, I have one partner that's a woman for 10 years. And they're like, oh, we don't have to do anything extra. Like I had to ask, can you investigate this? Nobody was going to. Even if the MRI happened, my primary care never brought it up. I did. They just like wrote it down and was like, well, that's just a thing that's happening and that's just there and that's that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that brings a whole nother element of the process in, you know. And then the conversation around something I experienced as someone who does not have the urge to carry, it almost felt like, we'll just have everything removed. Like that's the option, because you don't plan on birthing. Just get it all out. I don't want to get it all out. And why is that my only option? Yeah. And that was actually by a older black woman provider. And we'll talk about provider care also. But that was a really harmful experience. She also, naming the queer dynamic, she refused to acknowledge that I was not partnered with a man. She kept saying he, and I was like, is it
like, what is this?
Right. Am I saying she? Am
Right.
I saying
What
it? Is it me? Am I wrong?
happening?
Yeah.
So after it happened about the third time, because she was the first person to diagnose the most recent return, and after about the third time that she's blatantly reverting to heteronormativity, I was like, oh, I can't come back here.
Yeah.
Like this is a choice.
Yeah.
I was giving her a pass because she was older, so I was thinking, okay, she got to remember, like she needs to
Right.
Because it's not in my chart or something.
Yeah, but after that, so yeah, it was almost like, well, you don't plan on birthing. They're back. You're almost 40. Have a hysterectomy. Like that should be the option. No, I'm gonna think about it. I'm gonna think about that. And I had to process that in therapy and kind of go through it. Like, why am I so attached to my womb? Why am I attached to my uterus? Because it's a part of your body.
Right. Yeah.
It's a part of your body.
Yeah.
So yeah, just that notion to just disregard it, that's another significant mental health piece that I had to work through. That leads me to question what led to you all saying, yes, I'm going to move forward with the surgery. And how did you decide which procedure you were going to do? Because there's several and there's more popping up.
You want to go?
Yeah, I could start. Well, with my first provider actually diagnosing me with fibroids, it was also a Black female doctor who let me know that it was a surgery that she had performed herself. And she was really careful to not necessarily like push me towards like one particular solution. So she definitely said, if you don't want to do anything, that's an option for you. Yeah. You could do the embolization and try and get them shrunk. You could get a hysterectomy. You could get a myomectomy. So she gave me all the options, but I eventually decided on going with a myomectomy because I kind of wanted to like reclaim my body in a way, especially since I knew for so long that, this was a reason why I couldn't have children. So just to, kind of like clarify a little bit, I kind of never intended on having kids. And that was something that I said often, openly. But a part of it, and not a very small part of it, was because I knew that I couldn't.
Yeah.
So I kind of like took the diagnosis as an opportunity to like reset my thinking around my body and what it was capable of, just like a total reset. Yeah. So I was like, I may still choose not to have kids, but at least by taking the chance with a myomectomy, I can change my mind about it later and still have that option. So that was probably one of the main reasons why I went that route. And, for me, reset meant I don't want them shrunken. I want them gone. So even if we have to come back here to this moment again, like at least I started from point zero, as opposed to like, still dealing with some of these symptoms, especially after, like a 10-year journey with it, you just reset. That's what I was hoping for and looking for. And what a wild ride, because kind of similar to you, I had, the fibroid that was like smack dab in the middle of my uterus. They couldn't see anything in that ultrasound. They're like, we're going to guess you still have some ovaries over there that are doing okay, but we can't see it. We're going to go for a camera over here. Oh, we can see a little bit more, but not everything. So it's like it was literally taking over my insides. So it's crazy. But yeah, the one that that my provider felt that, kind of sent me on the journey to find out about it isn't the one that wasn't the fibroid that was like causing all of the crazy bleeding and stuff like that. So it's just, I needed that reset.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I love that word, reset. Yeah, and how you are you made a decision to reclaim your body.
I like that
reconnect
word,
with your
reclaim.
body. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's powerful. Talking about your provider made me think of the provider who did my first surgery, who was also a Black woman doctor, and I felt so cared for by her. And I think on my provider journey, because that first experience was so warm and compassionate, I've always kind of wanted that. Like,
Yes.
who says they love their gyno, you know?
Right.
Yeah, I love mine.
Yeah,
I do too.
Yeah, it makes such a difference. And you know, I think it's also important to emphasize that they're out there, and it might take going to 2 or 3 people or getting a second opinion until you find the care that you need. And I know, especially for women of color, particularly Black women, finding care that feels affirmative and supportive for us sometimes isn't easy. I know friends, you said you didn't go back to get your exam. What was it, 10 years?
10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I know a lot of people, like, that is not unheard of. They're just like, yeah, I'm good. Nothing's wrong.
Nothing's wrong.
Right.
Nothing's wrong, so I don't
Yeah.
need to go. We're just not going, you know. What about you, Kenya, as far as your provider experience and what led you to saying how you chose your procedure?
This is really interesting, that what's like the emotion that I'm feeling talking about this. I love my provider. There were some other people who had the same provider, and they told me about her, and her wait list was crazy. And so they had fibroids out. There's 2 of my friends from the gym. They had them out. They swore about her. I went to see her when I could get an appointment. I think it was like 4 months before I could get into her office. And I remember her doing all the procedures in the same day. And we weren't scheduled for that. We were scheduled for a consultation. And she's like, let's do the ultrasound. Let's do, and I was
Love that.
I was so I was so surprised that she took that time. I was there for 3.5 hours, my first appointment. And she too had the surgery. I went because I wanted to carry. And she was like, when they did the ultrasound, remember the first time I had got the MRI, it was the size of a grape. Then maybe 2 years later, it was the size of an orange. Then by the time I went to this ultrasound, it was like, you have to get, she
Right.
was like, there isn't, embolization will take too long and you will not be able to carry a
Right.
child. And she said, I had the same surgery, you have to get surgery. And so literally that day that I got the ultrasound, we scheduled the surgery that day because she had to do it when she had time. And I immediately knew I was going to get them out. I didn't want it. And I had gotten to the point where we had went on vacation June the 10th. June 13th, we were on vacation, and my surgery was June 23rd. And I actually got my cycle while I was on vacation, and I was like devastated because I was like, this is going to ruin my whole trip. And I remember counting down, like, how many more months do I have to do this? Because it had gotten to the point where it was just, it was unconscionable, like 800 milligrams ibuprofen every 2 hours. Like, the pain was crazy, the blood was insanity, my energy was, it was just so bad. And when she said ultrasound, she said, there's nothing, you got to get them out. You have to. And that was, they saw 2 on the ultrasound, and when they went in, there were 8.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yep.
so relatable.
Yeah, I think for me, what took me to the yes is I did try holistically again, and I started to realize how much restriction was showing up in my life. So you're telling me, in order to keep my uterus and womb healthy, I have to live this very, very restrictive life
Right.
of limited eating, clearing out all my containers, anything that might mimic or resemble. I started to feel obsessive.
Yeah.
It started to feel obsessive. And so I made a decision, all right, I'm going to give it a year. I'm going to go raw. I'm going to do all the things. I'm going to eliminate as much estrogen as possible, all natural cleaning products, all natural everything. I think I lasted 2 months.
I didn't even know about the cleaning products thing. I didn't realize that was a thing.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, estrogen dominance it's activated mostly by artificial, at this point, elements in our
didn't know
environment
that.
that mimic artificial estrogen.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Learn
I
something
didn't
new
know
every
that.
day.
It's the whole
Okay.
thing. Yeah. So it's not just your actual hormones, it's all the other things around us and the environment that can contribute to the spike. And we're living in the environment. And at that time, I had no intentions of going off the grid.
Right.
Although I thought about it
I
in the
gotta
past.
go for
Like,
grid
just
so I could not. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
That's
want
too
to.
much.
I don't want to.
Yeah.
So I decided I want to live a life of vibrancy, of fulfillment. And some people, I feel like if the all green raw life works for you and that feels nourishing and empowering,
Shout out to that.
Absolutely.
blessings on your path. Blessings on your path. But it felt obsessive and restricted to me. And so that's kind of what led to me saying I'd rather have freedom in this moment than keep chasing it.
Right.
Keep chasing it. I don't want to keep chasing freedom of my body. And the periods had gotten longer, 7 to 10 days, easy, 7 to 10 days. And so I did end up getting a second opinion from someone who was recommended through community, who was a specialist, because it was my second myomectomy and assessment and the size. The ultrasound report came back 20 and counting.
Wow.
20 and counting. They stopped counting.
Right.
20 plus.
They were like, it's 20 and then
some.
just some more.
And then some. And so I think I had a breakdown when I read that. Like, what? You just stopped looking? Okay. And that's when I was like, it's time.
Yeah.
It's time.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's time. And I don't want to restrict myself to a point. It almost started to feel like punishment in a way. Like, you need to starve this out of your body.
Yeah.
And so I decided to have another myomectomy, and I went to a specialist who felt very confident in his skills to do that. A little overly confident, but it works for him. And so it was successful. They removed 44 fibroids. 44 fibroids from my body. And again, that was an accumulation of 10 plus years. So I guess they had just been brewing.
Yeah.
They had just been brewing. And so what I would like to know is y'all's mental process as we start to kind of get to the end of our chat. The mental impacts leading up to your surgery and your recovery. Kind of what was that experience like for you mentally and emotionally?
I think I tried to bury it deep down. I think I set the date and I was just like, and I don't think I started to think about how serious it was until I went to the pre-op appointment and they were like, yeah, and we're going to put you under. And then I was like, what is anesthesia? ? Am I in a coma? ? Am I sleeping? And that was the part that scared me. I was so disconnected from the severity of it that in the hospital, I thought I was going home that night. And my doctor, she was a Black woman. She was like, you want to go home? She was like, fine. She was like, when you wake up, if you want to go home, just let me know. And I did not get it. I think I was and as I talk about this, I realized how disconnected I was from what was happening. I just mentally was like, I'm going to get surgery and that's what I'm going to do. And I did not think about it. And it wasn't until the recovery that I realized what happened. When I saw, I called them tummy holes, when I saw the holes in my body, when I saw that I had a tough time walking, when I realized the energy that I was missing, the weight that I lost, all of those things were the wake-up call. And that didn't happen until after I had the surgery and I was home. Yeah. And what I recognize now is there is a terror that I have daily about them coming back. Every time because I still drink, every time I have a drink, every time I have a bread-based snack, every time I have chicken, especially because I would eat chicken and chicken would literally give me a pimple under my chin. And if you Google that, they're like, that's estrogen. So I would literally get a pimple every time. And so now I find myself, because I haven't gotten pregnant yet, and it's been a year, and I remember the 3 to 6 months thing.
Right.
The terror that I sit with every day is, what if they're back? What if they come back? What if they come back? What if they come back? Even more afraid now than I was before I had them. And so that's been interesting. Periods, though, breeze. No pain, no pills, no couch. You know,
Yes.
Like, honestly.
but very real fear about them coming back,
That's real.
for sure.
That's real.
Yeah.
I can relate to that. I think for me, because I kind of just wanted to like start over in 2022, as soon as I found out that I might have fibroids, I was like, okay, you know, I'm just gonna plan aggressively for this. So I started like a whole walking journey. I started waking up at like 8 a.m. and I'm like, okay, if I'm gonna do a surgery, then that means that I'm gonna need like a routine to get back to. So top of the year, I just started walking 2 miles every day.
Wow.
And so all the way up into the surgery, that had become like a daily practice for me. And it was kind of wild because I got to know my community in a whole new way through it. It was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know we were neighbors over here. Oh my gosh, you walk at this time every day too? So I made a whole bunch of new friends through that too. But it was still an emotionally hard journey for me because at the time I was going through a lot of like relationship transitions. And the closer I got to like the surgery date, I started feeling more anxious about like who I might be able to count on to like actually be there with me and like hold my hand through the process. And not really feeling like I knew exactly who that would be was very emotionally hard. But thankfully my community showed up for me in full force. So yeah, they were kicking friends out of the room by the end of it. But it was like, it was so anxious, like leading up to it, like kind of like not really knowing where that support would come from. And it kind of really made me think about the different ways that we can try and hold community differently, you know, going forward around, you know, being there to care for each other when we go through hard things and surgeries or, you know, need to be in the bed for a week or two. It's like, who's going to bring you a meal? You know, who's going to sit down and talk to you while you can't move?
Sweep your floors. I had people sweep my floors because I couldn't sweep my floors.
That's beautiful. That's really special. And I think it makes me reflect on community too, right? Like we started this talking about how many people suffer in silence, right? And then as we get to this stage, needing to lean into that in a different way, you know, leaning into our supports. And for me, I think one of the hardest parts of my recovery was the lack of independence. And that was super triggering. You know, talk about realizations and wake ups. I like to, I guess I tricked myself into thinking that I like to be taken care of. Apparently that's not fully true. Because I thought I had my support lined up, right? I was blessed enough to have my mom come in, have my wife. So I'm thinking they got it. They're taking care of me. And I still needed more.
Absolutely.
I needed more. And I remember, you know, even the effects of the medication that I wasn't aware of, some of the pain meds that were prescribed, the pain meds, you know, had my mood all over the place. I wasn't aware. I didn't know how to plan for that. And so I think, especially as a lot of people who are high functioning or have full lives and we're managing a lot, to actually slow down and offload some of that stuff, and not only offload it but now be at the mercy and the dependence of even our closest loved ones, that brought up so much for me. And that was a surrender. It was like constant surrender, like actually, oh, you're not okay.
No, you're not okay.
You're not okay.
Yeah.
And I remember it was Kenya. Because I was struggling. There was some fear in the back of my head about I didn't want to get dependent on the pain meds. I had watched one too many documentaries and the work that I do. And I was like, not going down that route. And Kenya said, Jay, take the meds today. If you become addicted to it, we will handle that then.
Right.
She said, we're going to deal with that if that happens.
Right.
Take the meds, my love.
They
and
cut
stop.
44 things out
And
of your
stop
body.
Stop suffering.
Yeah.
Again, that activation of managing the pain,
Right.
tolerating the pain. I can do this, and I wasn't okay.
Yeah.
I just had to finally admit I'm not doing well.
Yeah.
So it was really special to see who showed up and allowing people to show up for me.
Right.
But in order for people to show up for us, they got to know we
Right.
need support. They have to know we need support.
Yeah. So why do you think we're so embarrassed?
I think our culture has made it to a point where it's like just having conversations online can sometimes feel, disconnected. So it's like, if you get comfortable, talking about your story, on Instagram through your stories, which is what I did, where it's like, I was actually posting about it up into and through my surgery, but we get so used to like not actually engaging with that kind of media. So it's like, even though it's your friends and family who see it and those are really
Just
the
like
main
double tapping
folks,
it on
it's just like, you're not really engaging in conversation around it. So it can then start feeling even more isolating to share.
Yeah.
So after a while, it didn't really feel like it was creating conversation in the way that I wanted it to. So then I felt like, well, why am I sharing? So I know that's a main thing for me. It wasn't that I was embarrassed about my journey. It was really more feeling like I was oversharing because there was so much limited engagement around what I was saying.
Yeah.
Oh. You know what's crazy has come up for me that I'm hearing is like my connection to my womanhood, right? Like for me, I think there's always been a level of like distance and maybe this much shame around the process of like menstruation and like all of what that looks like for women. I think our sexuality is celebrated, like, ooh, sexy woman. But like that piece is kind of like, shh, don't tell anybody about it. So like having a conversation about like bleeding for 10 days or soiling garments or that just felt like, I almost felt like every time I would soil my clothes or my car, like I would feel this embarrassment. Like,
for sure.
You're 40 years old. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, get your shit together. Yeah. Why can't you manage yourself? Like, that's how it feels. And who wants to say that or tell anybody that?
Absolutely.
Or you're so embarrassed that you are soiled, like. And I just think for me, I just felt like this disconnection with myself as a woman and feeling like, number one, I couldn't manage myself, which made me feel embarrassed like I was a kid, and so then all that came up with me losing my mom young and like nobody taught you how to do this. Like it was all of that. And it was like nobody else is making a mess on themselves. And like, you know what I mean?
But
Like
I definitely was.
Right. Well, clearly we all were. Clearly we all were. But it was like this thing that's like you should have this under control, and you don't.
Yep.
And so it made me like feel embarrassed.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
If there's something that you're not doing well or right.
Right.
And again, as people who hold a lot and do a lot of things well,
Yeah.
but I can't manage this.
Oh my God.
I can't manage
And it's
this.
coming every month. Why
Yeah.
are you so surprised every time?
Every month.
Yeah.
Ooh, you took the words out of my mouth.
Every month, and you're surprised every month,
Exactly.
and you make a mess every month.
I remember being emotional when I had to start wearing a panty liner.
Oh yeah.
Because I was wearing tampons and then adding a panty liner and then eventually
wear
had to
overnight
add a
pad.
pad. Yeah, and it just got more severe. But I remember being so upset. Like there's something wrong. There was something biologically wrong, but also tending to the needs of my body also felt as if I was doing something wrong.
I'm doing something wrong.
There's something,
Right.
or inappropriate. And I think also as far as the embarrassment piece, I don't know if embarrassment is the perfect word, but I know for me the privacy, like there's such a fine line between secrecy and privacy.
Yep.
Right.
And I think especially like you said, culturally, Ro, for a lot of us, that line is real blurred. Like secrecy often seems to be in the lead versus privacy.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Secrecy's winning.
And
because of the space that I hold for clients, I also remember not wanting people to feel like they had to take care of me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm okay. I'm good.
I'm
everybody.
fine.
I'm
Yeah.
good. Everybody. Don't
Yeah.
worry about anything,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that comes up often for me with sharing. Like, I don't want, if I share my truth, does this now shift to you feeling like you have to emotionally caretake
Right.
when I'm supposed to be holding space for you?
And that's my role all the time. It's never not that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
So as we are coming to a close for this beautiful conversation, where are you all with preventative lifestyle changes, anything that has shown up for you on this path of fibroid freedom, anything that you found?
I have a quick one, which is, you know, I've learned to trust myself and my body so much more. And so in the future, I know going forward, I'm going to trust providers, but I'm also going to trust my intuition even more. Because this journey has taught me that you know your body.
Yep.
You can feel shifts and changes in your body, and you can try and communicate those things to other people, but you are your first source of, you know, truth and information on what's going on for you. So I've been carrying that with me and kind of just remembering to listen more and check in with myself more and, you know, just say, okay, I ate this thing. What am I actually feeling now?
Yep.
Because you can feel those shifts.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm taking forward.
That's a good one. Okay, you ate this thing. That's very real. So I can't say that I've made the dietary changes that I want to make for other reasons, but I can say that I am more attentive to myself, how I feel as a woman. Like I'm much more connected to my femininity now, like on purpose, spiritually, physically, emotionally. It's something that I pay attention to, and how my body changes throughout my cycles, giving myself grace, realizing when I gain the weight every month, because I do still bloat a little bit just because, you know, of my cycle, like, you know, embracing that fullness that I feel versus judging it, and celebrating myself when I'm on my cycle, like doing certain things around my cycle where I'm like, this is a cleansing time for me, and I'm like embracing it, and it's a part of my conversation. I don't steer clear, like, you know, I'm like, I'm having my cycle right now, whatever, and I'm just like languaging that more, and not like letting it be a moment of shame for me, like embracing it, and of course, because I am on a fertility journey, just being attentive and also appreciative for what my body does do.
Absolutely.
And how it has healed, because my womb is still intact. Amen. You know, and so there is a possibility for pregnancy still, and that is a miracle within itself, and that makes me incredibly grateful, and I'm verbally grateful to my womb once a month for that. Like, okay, you're still doing your thing. I see you, girl. I got something coming for you. Just give me a second. Be patient. You know.
Love that. And that makes me think of, as y'all were talking, just the importance of breaking those cycles. When I started my cycle, it wasn't shamed, but I don't remember it being celebrated also. So when you talk about reclaiming that feminine energy and that divine femininity, like really wanting to intentionally, as we saw this weekend, there's so many kids around us and so many little ones coming up, and I really want to celebrate that, and we can start by embracing and celebrating our own cycles monthly, right? And I love how you mentioned normalizing it, just normalizing it is in conversation. You don't have to sneak off with your purse and your pad.
Right?
The fact that
We do that. We do. It's ridiculous.
Absolutely.
It's ridiculous. We all know. Like,
a little discreet.
God bless
But for me, the lifestyle change, you know, I try to focus more on the feelings part of it. And the stress piece is real too, and how that impacts our womb and our uterus. And so I try to do things that feel good, that ignite joy and creativity, and kind of charge that up in my body, and like really focusing on that.
And for me, that does mirror in dietary changes and lifestyle. So I'm still mostly vegetarian. Post surgery, though, the first thing that I woke up wanting to eat was fish.
Yeah.
And I listened to my body,
Yeah.
and it was so delicious.
Yeah, fish
and
is
so
delicious.
listening to your body, like you said, so I included some types of fish back in my diet. I do take a daily supplement now that's aimed at estrogen balancing and hormonal balancing. And then trying to make sure I'm moving about three times a week. So at a minimum. So really trying to love up on my vessel and like you said, reconnecting and listening to it. And I love that approach. It's less like externally focused. Like, what does this person say? What does this person say?
Right.
There's all this information that we have to sort through.
Yep.
But if you start here, like, well, can this be the initial informer? Like, what is my system and my body telling me? Can I pause and listen to my uterus and ask, what do you need? Does this feel okay, like you said, Ro? How does this feel after I eat this meal?
Yeah.
So those are some of the things I've shifted. Final question. And alcohol. I released alcohol about 7 years ago. So I am celebrating 7 years alcohol free. And thank you. Part of that was related to fibroids. Again, the initial diagnosis was over a decade ago, and the information was different then, right? Like, there's been changes over the times, but that was one of the things that they highlighted to release. And so that was part of my reason for releasing alcohol, as well as mental and emotional wellness also. And it's been a beautiful journey for me. So for those people who are curious in that, I think it's a beautiful opportunity to explore it. It works for everybody. It works for some people, not for everybody.
Right.
Yeah. It doesn't work for everybody. It works for some people, not everybody. But any advice, feedback, offerings that you would like to give to people who are maybe on this journey, who are starting out, not sure which direction to go in, not sure if they're going to do the wait and watch until symptoms, become more severe? Any offerings that you would like to share to the space as we close out? What would have been helpful for you to know?
I definitely would say do not wait and watch. Once you are aware that this is a thing, figure out how you want to address it. Don't have to get a myomectomy, don't have to get a hysterectomy, can do embolization, can do some dietary things to help. But I think the thing about fibroids is they grow.
Yeah.
And every time you put anything in your body, you're either feeding it or starving it in one way or another. So I would say once you know that they're a thing, address it however you feel comfortable addressing it. Don't let it go. And also, try your best not to hold a lot of shame about it, because it really is happening to a crap ton of people. And there's nothing wrong with you. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything spiritually. It's not a karmic debt that you're paying. I think this just may be one of the or consequences is too severe, but it's maybe one of the occurrences of having a female gender skin suit. Skin suits age, they wrinkle, lots of things happen, and for some women, they develop fibroids. So releasing the blame, but definitely do something. Do something. Do something. Don't do nothing. Yeah,
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
And I would say, seek out providers that are going to listen, to what you're saying about your body. So, don't let them say, we're not going to investigate further. Really find somebody who's willing to investigate with you, and, don't stop until you find somebody who will, because you need to be your first source of information on how you're doing and how you're showing up, so that you can know how you can address it moving forward. Because just like you said, they're just going to grow.
It's going to grow.
So unless you address them.
Yep.
So that would definitely be my recommendation. And also just be aware that, Oh, you're not alone
Yeah,
in
you're
this
not alone.
Yeah.
at all, especially if you are, a Black femme person, or a Black person with a uterus. And, unfortunately, it's a lot more common within our community. And it's so interesting that we don't talk about it as much as we do, because it's very common. So, you're not alone. And, maybe you might not need, surgical intervention, but, definitely have a plan for, how you want to care for yourself, considering the reality of it.
Yeah.
Remembering that we're not alone, remembering that we have community, remembering to check on your friends.
Yes.
If you have a
Yes.
friend that's been canceling monthly
Yeah, like
on
what's
stuff that
going
they
on?
used to look forward to, check on them.
Yeah.
Normalize the menstrual conversation.
Right.
So that's the offerings I would give to folks exploring options. Ask for recommendations, ask for referrals, do your research before, get a second and third opinion if it doesn't sit right for you. And also, you don't need to justify why you want to keep some of your parts or why you want to let it go.
Yeah.
It's a very individual journey.
For sure.
Yet you're not alone, right? It's an individual decision. It might look different for each of us, but we're here together.